Hello students, your teacher here with a lesson on absolute value. And absolute value is kind of interesting. We're going to study it in several places throughout our curriculum. Simplifying expressions, solving equations, and then eventually we're actually going to study absolute value functions. So it's important to understand what absolute value is. And you can see the definition here. It's the distance a value is from 0 on a number line. And you can see the symbols. They're similar to parentheses, grouping symbols, but instead of being curved, they're just straight, kind of like a lowercase l. And you can see here I have a number line drawn. And I wanted to also add, since absolute value is distance, I wanted you to remember that distance cannot be negative. Even if you walk backwards, you're still walking a distance, okay? Like if you've ever worn a pedometer, it doesn't matter whether you take a step forward or backwards, it still counts, okay? So distance cannot be negative, which is why when, well, you'll see here in just a second. So the first question says, what is the absolute value of 3? Well, let's see. How far is 3 from 0? 1, 2, 3. So the absolute value of 3 is positive 3. And the second question says, well, what is the absolute value of negative 3? Well, how far is negative 3 from 0? 1, 2, 3. So 3 and negative 3 both have the same absolute value. Okay? Absolute value is always positive. All right, let's change slide. Let's look at a couple examples, things that typically trip students up. First example here, we have -1 minus 2. And I know we haven't talked about subtracting integers yet, but if I were going to simplify this, there's really 2 ways that students typically do this. And one way works sometimes, and one way works all the time, okay? You don't take the absolute value of these 2 numbers until you've performed all the operations inside the absolute value. So in a way, absolute value is similar to parentheses because everything that's inside parentheses, you do first. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about order of operations. But first thing I need to do before I try to take the absolute value is I need to subtract those 2 numbers. -1 minus 2. And if I start at -1 and then I take 2 more away, that would be going to the left. So then I would have -3. Okay. All right, so the absolute value of -3, well, how far is -3 away from 0? And we already know that that is 3 away from 0. It's always positive. All right, example 2 here, we have 9 divided by -3. And since there's only a number, -3, inside the absolute value, I'm going to go ahead and take the absolute value of that. And I know that the absolute value of -3 is positive 3. And 9 divided by 3 is 3. All right, third example, the absolute value of -1. How far is -1 away from 0? 1. And example 4, the absolute value of -4 times the absolute value of -5. And we have the absolute value of -4 first, which is positive 4, times the absolute value of -5. How far is -5 from 0? It's 5. 4 times 5 is 20. I'm your teacher. This is the way.